start this thing called just a recap, but we got one recap for you because we were having a discussion last episode and we were like, dang, we need the opinion of a single man with money. So Cam is back. Now we can ask him. So basically, Luka's ex is filing for child support in California despite living in Slovenia. So Luka thinks it's an attempt for her to secure a bigger payout because she has herself and the kids overseas. Meanwhile, he's in California. They had their divorce because she does not want to bring the kids to California and she's refused to bring the kids. So our question to you is, what are your thoughts on that situation of her basically not wanting to bring the kids over to California? Do you see that as a money grab? Because Mace's thing is like, since they've been high school sweethearts and have known each other since 12 years old, she deserves half the money. What do you think about that?
She deserves something, Stat, not half.
You said a big percentage, but you can clarify now. You said she deserves a lot.
I did not say half. I said if she was there since 12 years old, she's not a gold digger, Stat. Or, but I told Killer, I said, I'm going to ask him this question. If we're talking about Stephon Marbury, did you not know that he was going to be a pro at 12 years old? And I told you what his answer was going to be, so I'm waiting to hear it.
Yeah, we definitely, it was laid out for him. Pause. Luka been a professional since he was 15, though. It isn't like he just came to the NBA. He been playing pro ball since he was 15. So, childhood or not, she knew to play. But the exact question is what?
Basically, do you see it as a money grab since she's overseas and he's in California and she's trying to get child support from it? And does she deserve a large amount? Maybe not 50% to Mace's point, but Mace's like, basically, she'd been with them from the start.
Well, this is, to me, a battle of power when it comes to that. If you knew that, first of all, it's this, right? We know how much these overseas players love going home. We actually seen Luka, I forget if it may have been this season, he left and missed a couple games to go see his child be born, his last child. I don't remember his last season or this season, but I remember him leaving to go see his child be born. So that's first and foremost. We're not going to act like he doesn't want to be a part of the child's life. Secondly, why are you fouling in California, right? You could have, you don't even live there. The kids don't live there. Who's in your ear to tell you, yo, California is it? Now, if he was still in Dallas, I might have just said, yo, let it play out. But everybody knows when you get to California, it's between 50 and 60% that you have to give up. I don't think this would have happened this way if it was in Dallas. But once you go into the state of California, money gets bigger for the person not making the most money. But I think this is terrible because you don't live in California. You don't want to even let the kids come to California. So that's a problem. Secondly, it isn't like Luka doesn't want to be home. That's what I was referring to before I got to that statement. That a lot of these players, when we see Joker, when we see Luka, Shea, whoever, Greek Freak, they all want to go home when the season's over. So if they can make as much money as home that they can make in the NBA, I don't think that they would be in the NBA. If Luka, the Joker, whoever can make $400 million where they're at, they wouldn't be in the NBA because they're rushing to get back home. They come here for the money. So it isn't like Luka's out here fucking off. We don't hear about Luka with no scandals, with no chicks in the club doing anything. The only thing you hear about Luka is he like to drink and he's overweight and he still busts his nigga's ass, pause. So I don't really understand where the wife is coming from to make this type of attempt to get more money. I'm pretty sure that he's looking out. I can't say anything like that. I'll tell you this much. It's bad over there in that country, right? Luka's mom, now I'm going to come back to y'all with this story. I'm going to get it right because I don't know it I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'm going to get this story right. Well, Luka's mom trademarked his trademark. He has a trademark symbol. And she trademarked it when he was a teenager. And then when he tried to do his sneaker deal, she tried to sell the trademark to the shoe company so she could get hers, and Luka was against it. And he had a fallout with his mom over some trademark shit. It's rough out there, man. His family don't even care about you out there, man. I'm gonna get the story right because I know I'm not hitting it with the nail on the head, but it's something with his mother, and his mother went against him and tried to sue him, and the sneaker it was a mess. And I was like, his mother, and I was like, yeah. But to me, this sounds really like it isn't about even a single man with money. This is the fact she break down. She doesn't live in America. She doesn't come to America. You don't want the kids to come to America.
Yeah.
Why are you filing for divorce or child support? Child support or divorce?
Yeah,
child support in California when it's 50 to 60% that you have to give up. Pardon me, that's for divorce. I don't know what child support is, so pardon me for getting that wrong. But I'm pretty sure it's bigger than Dallas. And I think it's whack. I think it's whack. I don't support it.
Yeah.
And you say,
Stat, I told you what answer he was gonna give you. I told you, you can know at 12 years old. You can know. There's some people that we do know by 12 years old that they're gonna be a pro. They walk in with their dad, or they walk in with somebody. They're carrying their bags. They got their water. These are signs. They don't wear their regular sneakers in the gym. They wear flip flops. It's all these things. They're on a regiment. As soon as they walk in the gym, they're doing stretches, pause. They're doing different drills. They're way more focused than everybody else because their family already know this is a business. And I was saying that, Killer, that she knew this once he got to L.A. Once he got to L.A., she said, I got to file in L.A. Niggas think I'm playing. If he goes to L.A., then that's going to be to my benefit. But that's really interesting. Yeah. But let me ask you something, Killer.
Yeah.
If a child lives in a mansion in one city, when they break up, do you believe the child should live less than that when they break up?
Yeah, listen, it depends on what the mother want to do. You know what I'm saying? I can't tell you because sometimes you may be like, yo, for instance, right? If Luka's wife or baby moms or whatever is getting, let's just say, $100,000 a month, and she want to stay where she at, is that Luka's fault?
Yeah, that's why we wanted your take, Killer. Listen, I understand. I said this the stat. If you're paying a certain amount of child support, and tomorrow she get the child support, and then the next day they're in Cancun with Future and Meek Mill, are you paying the same child support? This is just the question we're asking.
Yeah, absolutely. I have no doubt that Luke is willing to take care of his kid. I don't know him that well, but he makes way too much money not to send that over. Now this is another question, right, Murder? Now this, right? Yeah. This is another question, right? What if he's sending like $3,700 a month and be like, I know what it take to live over there. That's luxurious.
Yeah.
You only need $600 a month to live. I don't know. I'm just being exaggerative. Yeah. And he said, she like, yo, you could at least send $15,000. Like $3,700, you killing them.
Yeah, the dollar might equate to something greater later,
Right.
But I'm telling you, if you send enough 5,000, and then as soon as you send that 5,000, she was all stressed out, and then the next day she's in her post talking about take me through there. The money going down. I'm telling you, the money might be going down. That's what I believe.
Yeah, PT just let me know that child support is 40% for 2 children in LA and 50% for 3 children in California.
Damn.
So.
And 60 for marriage.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
60 for marriage.
60 for marriage.
Yeah, so how much you got?
Yeah. So when she takes you to LA and say, we're starting over, fellas. This is Mace telling you. It's a play. Listen, you can play yourself if you want. Start over then. Don't take my advice. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm always spinning. Go to LA. Enjoy yourself.
What's the name just recently did that, if I'm not mistaken? Anthony Edwards' baby mom just did that. She refiled for her child support in L.A. because she moved to L.A. And then filed for child support so it'll be higher. So I don't know where she's from, Atlanta. I don't know, but now y'all know I'm gonna move to Cali. And
all of a sudden she got a LAID. You know what's up?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the government needs to do something about this. The government needs to step in.
Somebody else gotta do it.
Nah, because this is like a fucking play. They like writing a play on the loophole. And I'm calling it a loophole in California. If Anthony Edwards, I'm not getting into this business because I know he's not the topic. If he say, yo, I'm cashing out on this baby, $1 million. Y'all good? You sure? Okay, cool.
She took the $1 million. This is the same one took the $1 million?
Yeah, moved to L.A.
Nah, we was on her side last time.
Yeah, but now she like, yo, I thought about it. The $1 million ain't enough, and I live in L.A.
That's what happened.
Huh?
That is what happened, but it was unsuccessful, and they were able to bring the court back to where it belonged in Georgia.
Yeah, see? But see, I bet you she moved back to Georgia now. She's like, damn, she ain't even fucking work.
That's crazy, man. You gotta love Georgia, man. You gotta love Georgia.
The first thing that needs to be broken down is what was actually said during this debate. Because once you look beyond the jokes and playful exchanges, you uncover a much larger legal and financial issue. And trust me, this is where the conversation takes a turn most people never saw coming. The entire discussion revolves around Luka Dončić's former partner filing for child support in California, despite living in Slovenia with their children, while Luka now calls California home after joining the Los Angeles Lakers following his move from Dallas. That one detail changes the entire direction of the debate. This isn't just another story about parents living in different countries. It's really about which state's legal system decides the financial outcome. And once that question enters the picture, everything becomes far more complicated. Mase wasted no time making his position clear, arguing that Luka's former partner deserves half of his wealth. His opinion wasn't driven by emotion alone. He reminded everyone that Luka and his former partner had known each other since they were only 12 years old. They were together long before NBA contracts, superstar status, or worldwide recognition ever became part of Luka's life. From Mase's point of view, that kind of history matters because she experienced the difficult years before the success arrived. In his eyes, she wasn't someone who appeared after the money started flowing. She stood beside him before any fortune existed, and he believes that completely changes what she should rightfully receive. Cam, however, wasn't ready to fully agree with that conclusion. His take landed somewhere between both extremes. He acknowledged that she deserves meaningful financial support and possibly even a significant portion, but not automatically half. That distinction matters much more than it seems because it reflects two very different ways of viewing the same situation. Mase sees it through commitment, sacrifice, and the years they built together. Cam approaches it from the standpoint of fairness, legal principles, and what can realistically be defended under the law. Those perspectives almost never produce the same answer, and honestly, that's exactly what made this debate so compelling to watch. Then another voice entered the discussion. It came from someone described as a successful single man with money. His approach removed the emotions completely and focused on how these cases look from the perspective of the person expected to pay. Then he asked one question that instantly shifted the entire conversation. Instead of focusing on childhood history or loyalty, he asked something much more practical. Why was this case being filed in California in the first place? That became the defining moment of the segment, and you could argue it was one of the sharpest observations anyone made. He pointed out that Luka has never publicly shown signs of walking away from his responsibilities as a father. His actions appear to support that claim. He even stepped away during the NBA season to be present for the birth of his child. That's a significant sacrifice for an athlete competing at the highest level. Missing games can affect both your team and your reputation, yet he still chose to be there. Beyond that, there haven't been headlines involving reckless behavior, no nightclub controversies, no stories about other women, and nothing suggesting Luka.
He's trying to avoid supporting his family.
According to the discussion, the strongest criticism anyone could offer was that he enjoys drinking and occasionally arrives less than perfectly conditioned for basketball. Even with that, he continues performing as one of the NBA's elite players. Based on everything raised by the panel, this doesn't resemble the story of an absent father trying to dodge responsibility. So if his character isn't really being questioned, then what exactly is driving this case? That's when the conversation turned toward the legal issue that could change everything. The panel explains something many people overlook when discussing family law. Child support rulings and divorce outcomes can look dramatically different depending on which state has legal jurisdiction. California became the main focus because financial awards connected to divorce can sometimes be substantially larger there, with the panel mentioning percentages as high as 50 to 60% in certain situations compared with many other states. Texas, where Luka previously played for the Mavericks before joining the Lakers, naturally became the comparison. Had this exact situation unfolded while he was still living and playing in Texas, they argued the financial outcome might have looked completely different because Texas follows a different legal framework. That was the central point they continued emphasizing. Whether people agreed with the ethics or not, Luka's move to Los Angeles didn't just transform his basketball career, it also placed him under a different legal system for any future child support or custody disputes. The theory raised by the panel was that once Luka became a California resident, filing there suddenly became much more attractive from a financial standpoint than it would have been in Texas. That's where the single man with money perspective came into play. It stopped being about romance or shared history. Instead, it became a discussion about recognizing when the legal landscape changes and using that change to your advantage. At the same time, the panel never suggested that Luka's former partner should automatically be viewed as the villain. They made a clear distinction between two issues that people constantly blur together online. The first question was whether she deserves child support. Most of the panel agreed she absolutely does, because she was with Luka long before the wealth arrived and continues raising their children. The second question focused on whether filing in California while living overseas and keeping the children in Slovenia reflected a calculated financial strategy rather than a routine legal decision. That's the part they challenged. Those are two entirely separate conversations, and mixing them together is exactly why debates like this quickly spiral across social media. Someone can deserve substantial financial support while people still question the reasoning behind a particular legal strategy. That layer of nuance was actually one of the most important parts of the discussion, even though it was easy to miss beneath all the jokes. Another interesting question was also hiding beneath the surface of the debate, and it's one that deserves attention. If a child grows up surrounded by luxury and the parents later separate, should that child suddenly be expected to live a dramatically different lifestyle? On the surface, it sounds like a simple fairness argument, and it's the kind of statement that many people immediately agree with. After all, nobody wants to imagine a child being forced into a completely different standard of living simply because the relationship ended. Once the relationship was over, however, the panel argued the answer wasn't nearly as straightforward as simply saying yes or no. Instead, they suggested the bigger question centers on what the receiving parent actually wants and how the support money is ultimately being used. That's the debate sitting underneath almost every high-profile child support case involving celebrities and professional athletes. It usually goes far beyond whether the child is deserving.
Financially cared for. The real issue becomes who controls the money, how much accountability exists for where those funds are spent, and whether the amount being requested genuinely reflects the child's needs or simply helps maintain a much larger lifestyle that doesn't necessarily benefit the child directly. That's when the panel shifted into a series of hypothetical examples. Even though everyone laughed while throwing out different figures, you won't believe this, the underlying point they were making was far more serious than the jokes suggested. They painted a hypothetical scenario where child support payments arrive every month without interruption, yet the receiving parent is regularly seen taking luxury vacations with wealthy or celebrity friends. The debate wasn't about whether she deserves a comfortable life. The real issue was whether the money being requested is truly for the children's well-being or if child support is quietly being used to finance an upscale lifestyle. That distinction matters because legally, child support and spousal support serve two completely different purposes, even though many people casually lump them together. Ironically, the panel admitted they had done exactly that during the conversation. They paused to correct themselves, acknowledging that they had been talking about divorce-related percentages, even though Luka's case is strictly a child support matter governed by a completely different legal formula. That correction carried much more weight than it first appeared. It reminded everyone that figures like 40% for 2 children or 50% for 3 under certain California guidelines aren't the same thing as dividing marital assets during a divorce. Child support is typically calculated through established formulas that consider each parent's income, custody arrangements, and the number of children involved. Divorce cases, by comparison, often involve property division, spousal support, and other financial negotiations that don't automatically apply to child support disputes. So when the conversation originally treated everything like a simple 50-50 split before correcting itself, it wasn't just a minor slip. It actually showed how easy it is for even informed people to confuse these complicated legal topics while trying to make sense of them. Then the conversation shifted in a direction nobody expected by bringing up Luka's mother and the trademark dispute. At first, it sounded completely unrelated, but it actually reinforced the bigger theme running through the entire discussion. The panel argued that once serious money enters the picture, even the people closest to you, including family, can sometimes end up on the opposite side of your financial interests. According to the story they shared, Luka's mother trademarked his name while he was still a teenager, long before he had the knowledge or resources to protect that kind of intellectual property himself. Later, when major sneaker opportunities surfaced, that trademark reportedly became leveraged during business negotiations, with claims that she sought her own financial share because she controlled those rights. Whether every detail is perfectly accurate wasn't really the point they were trying to make. The bigger message was that extraordinary wealth often creates conflicts where nobody expects them. Sometimes the toughest financial battles don't come from strangers at all. They happen inside families that appear perfectly united from the outside. That example connected directly back to Luka's current situation because the panel framed his former partner's legal filing as something that's far from uncommon. Instead, they suggested it's part of a pattern that frequently follows wealthy professional athletes. Former partners, relatives, and sometimes even longtime friends often make financial decisions differently once major wealth enters the equation, regardless of how strong those relationships once seemed. That doesn't automatically make those decisions dishonest or unfair. Everyone has the legal right to pursue financial security, and that's exactly why the court system exists, to sort through competing claims under the law. But it does explain why stories involving superstar athletes often seem to follow a familiar script. Someone changes teams, legal paperwork gets filed, and suddenly where that paperwork is submitted becomes almost as important as the relationship itself. The panel then supported that theory with a real-world example instead of relying only on speculation. And honestly, this may have been one of the strongest points raised during the entire discussion. They referenced a case involving Anthony Edwards' child's mother, who was said to have refiled for child support after relocating to Los Angeles, believing California's legal system could produce a larger support award because of the new jurisdiction. According to the panel, that strategy ultimately failed because the case was reportedly transferred back to its original jurisdiction in Georgia. That final detail stood out because it suggested that simply filing in another state doesn't automatically guarantee the financial result someone is hoping for. What really strengthened the panel's argument was that they weren't presenting some brand new theory they had invented on the spot. They pointed to examples suggesting courts have already dealt with situations like this before, and at least one of the cases they discussed reportedly didn't end the way the filing party expected. Their takeaway was that family courts are becoming increasingly aware of jurisdiction-based filings, where someone relocates or files elsewhere hoping for a more favorable child support outcome, and judges aren't automatically rewarding those strategies anymore. That's an important layer to Luka's situation because it means their skepticism isn't based solely on personal opinion. They believe there are real examples showing these legal approaches don't always deliver the result people anticipate. Courts generally examine where the children have primarily lived, where custody has actually been established, and the family's overall history, not simply which courthouse receives the paperwork first.
If Luka's former partner continues living in Slovenia with the children and has no plans to relocate them to California, that alone could become a major factor in deciding which court has proper authority over the case. Filing somewhere is only the beginning. It doesn't automatically mean that court keeps jurisdiction. And that's exactly why the Anthony Edwards example became such an important part of the discussion. Another interesting detail was the specific word the panel kept using to describe the entire situation: a loophole. That choice of wording reveals a lot about how they view the legal process. A loophole usually describes something that's technically legal, but may not fully reflect the original intent or spirit of the law. Nobody on the panel argued that filing a child support case in another state is illegal. Families relocate all the time for legitimate reasons, and the legal system is designed to handle those situations. Their argument, however, was that the timing and circumstances surrounding this filing make it appear far more strategic than routine. In their opinion, Luka's move to California wasn't simply another career change. They believe it created a legal opportunity that someone decided to take advantage of. That's why they labeled it a loophole, using laws meant to protect children regardless of where parents live, as a possible way to maximize the financial outcome by choosing the jurisdiction with the most favorable guidelines. The panel also introduced a hypothetical that reaches far beyond Luka's personal situation. They questioned whether child support should automatically increase simply because the paying parent becomes significantly wealthier or begins living a far more luxurious lifestyle, even if the child's everyday needs remain largely unchanged. That's a debate family courts have wrestled with for decades. Should child support cover only what a child genuinely needs to live safely and comfortably? Or should those payments rise alongside
the paying parent's income, even when the additional money doesn't directly improve the child's daily quality of life? Different states answer that question in very different ways, and that's exactly why jurisdiction plays such a major role. In places with more generous child support guidelines, the final award may reflect the parent's overall wealth instead of only the practical costs of raising the child. That's the issue the panel kept returning to, even while joking about support payments jumping from a few $1,000s to dramatically larger amounts almost overnight. There was also a broader financial lesson hidden underneath all the humor. It was easy to overlook because everyone was laughing about flip-flops at the gym and children who looked destined for professional sports before even reaching high school. But beneath those jokes, the panel was really talking about recognizing potential early. Some young athletes show elite talent years before the rest of the world catches on, and when families recognize that kind of future, they often begin thinking about long-term financial planning much earlier than most people realize. The panel wasn't necessarily criticizing that mindset. They were simply pointing out how families around elite athletes often operate. If people can identify a future superstar that early, it's reasonable to believe they're also thinking early about protecting financial interests, which brings the conversation right back to Luka's former partner. Growing up together and recognizing someone's future earning potential aren't mutually exclusive ideas. Both can exist at the same time, and that's ultimately the balance the panel spent the entire discussion trying to figure out. The conversation also explored why so many international stars choose the NBA in the first place, and that added a much deeper emotional dimension to the debate. The panel argued that many European players genuinely prefer returning home the moment their seasons end. Luka was mentioned alongside several other international stars who reportedly head straight back to Europe once their NBA obligations are finished. Their point was simple: if those same players could earn comparable salaries in their home countries, many of them probably wouldn't spend most of the year thousands of miles away from family and everything familiar. They come to the NBA because that's where the financial opportunities exist. That context matters because it pushes back against the idea that Luka is chasing the California lifestyle or turning his back on his roots. Based on the panel's perspective, he'd likely choose home if the career opportunities were equal. That's why they viewed the California filing through a different lens. Rather than seeing a father avoiding responsibility and finally being forced to step up, they saw someone who has consistently shown commitment to his family, whose move to California was driven by basketball instead of personal preference, and who is now facing a legal filing that some critics believe is more about jurisdictional strategy than genuine financial necessity. There's one final reason this case sparked far more conversation than a typical child support headline. Most public debates involving professional athletes revolve around fathers who disappear, avoid paying support, or remain absent from their children's lives. According to the panel, this situation doesn't appear to fit that familiar pattern, and that's exactly why they spent so much time digging beneath the surface. When the facts don't match the story people expect, the natural response is to look for another explanation. In this case, the explanation they arrived at wasn't personal neglect, it was the strategic use of legal jurisdiction, and that ultimately became the biggest talking point of the entire discussion. That's also what made the conversation uncomfortable for many viewers. It never presented an obvious villain. Nobody on the panel argued that Luka was a bad father or someone who abandoned his responsibilities. Instead, their focus shifted toward the legal system itself, suggesting that different child supports
Laws across various states can create financial incentives that influence people's decisions, even when a relationship appears healthy from the outside. That's a much more complex story because it refuses to fit into the usual hero versus villain narrative. At its core, the debate was really about incentives and how laws designed to protect children can sometimes become powerful financial tools once millions of dollars enter the picture, regardless of whether the relationship behind the case was strong or broken. When you step back and look at the entire discussion, it becomes clear this was never really about picking sides in Luka's personal life. It was about explaining how the financial reality surrounding modern superstar athletes actually works. State laws, career decisions, and family relationships often collide in ways that most people never stop to consider. Mase represented one perspective, emphasizing loyalty and the years spent building a life together before fame and fortune ever arrived. Cam and the rest of the panel leaned toward proportionality, focusing on how family law actually functions while questioning whether California's legal advantages influence the filing. That viewpoint carries weight as well, because it examines how legal systems can sometimes be used strategically instead of emotionally. Neither side offered a perfect answer, and that's exactly why the discussion kept circling back without reaching a clear conclusion. By the time the conversation wrapped up, the biggest takeaway wasn't necessarily about Luka himself. It was about recognizing a pattern that continues appearing throughout professional sports. Massive wealth doesn't just transform someone's bank account. It reshapes the legal and financial landscape surrounding almost every major decision they make. It can redefine relationships with former partners, family members, and even the people they trust the most. Something as ordinary as moving to another state can suddenly create enormous legal consequences that most people would never expect. Whether you believe that's fair or think it's an overly cynical way of looking at things is exactly the debate the panel was having. And that's why this conversation resonated with so many people, because there isn't one simple answer. The loyalty argument has merit. The jurisdiction argument raises valid questions. In the end, money, family history, and the legal system are all tightly connected, and once you really unpack it, separating those pieces is far more difficult than it first seems.